Welcome to the March meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Commission. Want to start with approval of the February minutes.
Make a motion to approve?
All four? Okay,
Yep.
okay,
Aye.
thanks. Minutes are approved. So I'm going to get a little out of order tonight. I thought maybe we should start by sort of doing an update on what's happening with water quality and wastewater management. Mark, do you want to start, or?
All right. So in terms of there was a Clean Water Committee. The village established a Clean Water Committee that has been working very closely together with the Lake Agawam Conservancy. And we've put together an action plan, a copy of which is on this table. And we have had a discussion with the DEC. And here is a summary of this action plan. The action plan calls for various methods to be able to reduce the pollution presently coming into the lake. Some of them, one of them being the possible creation of a sewer district for the village business center, and other ones are spelled out here in terms of filtration, biofiltration, and bioswales. And installation of various elements around the lake to be able to mitigate the pollution of the water. I think that it's a very well organized. I mean, it's a compilation of efforts that have been done over the years and studies that have been done over many years, and I think it's a great way to put it all together. And now that we have an action plan, I think it's up to the village trustees to implement it and to move forward.
Right, so I guess a few points. One is, thanks to Tom Lotham and Rob Coburn, who've done an extraordinary amount of work over the last year to sort of, in part, really assemble a tremendous amount of data that's been compiled about the lake over the last 10 years. And put it into one document, which is incredibly helpful. And then secondly, the village has obviously been working with DEC. There was the project that DEC did, I guess, earlier this year in the lake. And we're finding out more and more as that happens. The next step, in part, there was going to be a joint meeting with the town to talk about this action plan and how both the town and village can help make it happen. So, and also the Lake Agawam Conservancy has been very involved, and one of the things you'll see, this is on the village's website, I believe, or if not, will be the next few days, is significant amount of the issues in the lake relate really are the interaction between the lake and the houses around it. And so having the Lake Agawam Conservancy involved is very important because they can be a big factor in improving the conditions in the lake. This fits in a nice way, I guess, with the project the Planning Commission has been working on for a long time, which is the creation of a sewer district in the village to try to address the wastewater that is a significant component of the pollution in the lake, and also to allow the diverse uses that we Planning Commission believes the village needs to do to become to remain and to some extent be restored as a viable business district going forward. So I think given that this is now done, we're now going to take a role in going back to the trustees to sort of give a review of the steps that now need to start to happen to create a sewer district. Number one, there's a number of legal steps that need to happen. Those take several years, so we want to get that underway. And then secondly, sort of how the different technologies come into play. There's also there are sites that are potentially available, which I think we want to talk to about the trustees in the town about.
Right.
So we really, I think it's time now to move to the next step, now that we have sort of a all-encompassing document that looks holistically at the lake. The county, and I think in part because of what's going on with the state right now, but the county is really now moving aggressively to cause municipalities to address their wastewater management issues. So for example, like those of you who read the local newspapers, East Hampton is also doing a study now of potential sewer district. Any of you who read the East Hampton newspapers, it's just really interesting because the issues that we face in Southampton Village, it's almost like someone took the articles that were done about us and just translated them into East Hampton. You know, stores being closed, not able to open new restaurants, concerns about the changes in retail, the county really bearing down on them for wastewater. The same issues we're facing, every village of the East End is gonna, or I should say on the South Shore, is gonna face. So that's, I think we're now ready, now that this has happened, to go to the next step.
I have a question.
Sure.
I think that this is very important, but you mentioned that there's going to be discussions with the town.
Right.
So I think my first feeling is that we wait to move forward until we hear about the discussions with the town.
Well, I think that the town has, right now the town is creating also another sewer district in Hampton Bays. So they are going through a similar process for the Hampton Bays. The next step really here will be to hire an engineering firm, a local engineering firm, to then do a feasibility study with the various systems, study the various possible sites for a sewage treatment plant. So that's really the next step. And then because we have identified some sites that are possibly outside of the village district that are actually within the town, we think that...
One of the
But I
reasons...
mean, what is the purpose of the meeting with the town?
Well,
It's the town.
Excuse me, Joe.
The town trustees.
What is the purpose of meeting with the town?
The purpose, I think it's to, first of all, to share information,
Okay?
and then to have possible coordinated approach with the town.
So-
And also, since there is a possibility that on one of the sites that we have identified, which is outside of the village business district,
Right, this
that
sounds-
possible sewage treatment plant could handle also other areas than just the village.
Sure.
Yeah, I would also point out, so the other reason to meet with the town is that because of the action of local legislators, you can now use CPF funds
Right.
for clean water. So the town could play a pretty instrumental role in
It seems
how this
to,
moves forward.
it just seems to me that to move forward, that would be integral
Yeah.
to our moving
Yeah.
forward, rather than, waiting for them.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I think.
Right,
That's what I think.
I think it will be okay, because I think the thought is to meet with the town in the next month. I don't think people think
Yeah,
that this is a
so I don't think
long-term-
it's too far in the
Right, right.
forward
Yeah,
and
yeah.
coming back and assessing that, and then we
Right.
have a more complete
Right,
presentation, as it were, or something.
right.
This is very complete, but, if that's an integral step, I see it like
Right.
that. If
Right.
I'm wrong, tell me.
No,
I also have another question. Who are stakeholders?
Who are the stakeholders here?
Yeah, who are the stakeholders?
There's a number of them, obviously. There's at the local level, there's the people who live around the lake.
Uh-huh.
There's the other residents of the village who either use the lake or you use the park.
Is it the population of Southampton Village? I'm just curious.
Well, no, but that's two of them. Third is the businesses and the property owners in the business district.
Okay.
And then I think at a secondary level, the town, the county, and the state. But really at a secondary, the first ones really are those of us in the village who, for whom the lake is a very critical resource. And then the business district, which interacts so directly with it, both because of physical proximity, but also because of the watershed. So those are the stakeholders.
Okay, well, I just question the use of the word.
Right.
That's a good question. But also in terms of meeting with the town, the other element is that the town offices are
right.
within the watershed.
Right, right,
And they are, you know, a substantial part of the traffic that's coming into the village.
right,
In the daily use.
right, yes, yeah,
But also, I just want to clarify that it's the town trustees, not the town council.
right, right,
Town trustees.
right.
Well,
beg your pardon, but
Right.
you know.
I'm saying it's a different entity. That's all I'm
Right,
saying.
right, right,
It's
right,
not, you know.
right.
Well, I don't know, I question the use of the word stakeholders.
Yeah.
It implies ownership?
Well, there's sort of ownership of the issue, I would say.
yeah, I don't think it was
Right.
meant that way.
Right, right.
Okay.
Um,
Concerned parties?
Yeah, it should be
Right,
concerned party rather
Right.
than stakeholders, you're right.
right, right.
I
Okay.
think so too.
Stakeholders are a much more popular word these days.
Is it?
Yes. But I think what's been done is a terrific piece of work. I think it will help clarify for everyone. There's a lot of, I would say, misinformation out there about the various theories of what would be the magic bullet for the lake. I think what this report makes clear is
All the above.
right, exactly. It is really all the above. There's multiple things that need to happen. And I just, I would say, we were early, maybe too early in this issue in some ways. But the world's come a long place, and particularly Suffolk County and the East End. And we have sort of the example, which will be both good and bad, and we'll learn lessons from, the system being built now in West Hampton Beach.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
The stakeholders, I think, will be very interested in what the town trustees
Right.
have to weigh in.
Yeah, no,
It's
absolutely.
also important to know that there's a lot of public and private money involved, so it's
Right.
not just our money. It's also
Right.
people on the lake. It's also
Right.
other private entities.
Right.
So
Right.
it's important to know as well.
Yeah. Any questions, comments? Okay. So next, so one of the, and I'll let them make a presentation. So, we look a lot at land use, particularly sort of in and around the village business district. There's a street, a map street that runs north-south from Hill Street towards, but not linking to Cooper's Farm Road, called Viridian Way. It's adjacent to the Southampton Inn and some other businesses. So, the owners of the Southampton asked to sort of open up a dialogue about it. So I'm going to let them make a presentation, and then we'll talk about it.
Thank you.
Take from here, or I can open up for you.
Here. Thank you. So I'm Dee Dee Moan from the Southampton Inn, and also 71 Hill Street had been approximately 6 acres. It was planned in the 1960s. There's a road between the two, unnamed road, then Unamid Way, now Viridian Lane. But this isn't so much about the road, it's about the two separate parcels. On the 91 Hill parcel, there are 90 guest rooms, the Southampton Inn. There's a ballroom, meeting rooms, event space, a tennis court, a swimming pool, and lovely gardens, at least in another 6 weeks. And it's a somewhat self-contained unit. On the east side of Viridian is 71 Hill Street. I think it had been originally planned as a retail strip. Well, actually, originally, I think it was apartments because there are bathrooms that were never hooked up all over it. And then it became a retail strip because it was going to be on this unnamed road, which was supposedly connecting to Cooper's Farm Road, which would now go right through a former mayor's house, apparently. And it's leased out at the moment as sort of secondary, tertiary office space. There's a lovely restaurant there. There's a radio station that's going to be leaving in about 3 months. And the building needs to either be fixed as it is, or it needs to have a potentially more modern, more village-centric, appropriate use. So I'd like to just share the boards and then discuss some of the options that might fit in with what we'd like to do. And the first one is if we take out all the blacktop, we can make a garden so it's not going to run into Lake Agawam. So the first, how do I present? Put it here.
We have a camera on top.
Oh, well. So the first board is what we currently have. On Hill Street, the Village Latch is going to be here.
Right.
And then the movie theater is here, and somebody else's office is here.
Right.
And the inn itself is, again, pretty self-contained, but these are the parking spaces that are associated with the inn, Viridian Way, and then we have parking places here. And just looking at this, in 71 Hill at the moment is 3 separate commercial buildings. These 2 have been pretty fully renovated, and they're reasonably well leased to tenants and businesses we'd like to keep. There's a major tenant possibly coming in here, and a very fancy sort of furniture accessory that might be coming in here, and I think it's just wonderful for the life of the village on the West End. I think this is just ridiculous amount of hideous
Can I ask you a
blacktop.
question? this is open space back
This
here?
is what I want to know, what's here.
So
Right.
this is Cooper's Farm Road, and
Right.
there's a triangle right in here that's owned by the village that was to be used for sanitary or potential leaching fields way back when. And it's a lot of bramble, and then it just rolls down into Cooper's Farm Road, and it's going to go right through some of the
Can you
So
give
that
me,
owns
can you
by
give
the
me
village.
bounds, like, okay, where, if it's coming through to Cooper's Farm, where's the library?
Oh, the library is here.
Right.
And, okay, here, and then there's the
Condos.
yeah, the townhouses are here. There's an open field here.
Yes.
Is that where it hits? It hits in
It's
that
going to go through the open field and rolling to
Cooper's Farm?
Cooper's Farm.
Because
That's how
there's
it's
quite a bit
mapped.
of an incline
Yes.
and quite a
Right.
bit of a dip there.
Right.
Yes, there is, and also, there's a triangle right in here that is village property.
Is it currently now sort of forested?
It's just-
Right.
It's just kind of
Brambly.
brambly?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so it's going to come basically right in the center of that green space.
Yes,
Okay.
and, okay, well, this is what we currently have.
Mhm.
Next time,
Okay.
I'll bring in an overview.
That's great.
And just, I don't think this is at all helpful, but these are just existing views. Although the village has repaved,
Mhm.
it's starting to pit again.
Right.
It's, that's
Right.
what it is.
That parking lot behind the movie theater and that was really
Right.
awful.
Yes. So this is really not the subject. Very quickly going through this, one of the proposals which could be on the table, doesn't have to be, would be to be able to come down Hill Street and continue with Viridian Way, but to be able to have it, let me see. To relocate a drop-off area for the hotel, and then to have the parking be around to the east and the north. And that everything in the middle here would become garden, so that the Southampton Inn would look not only to the west over the gardens, which are the preferred rooms, but also the eastern rooms would now be a gardenscape rather than looking over a 1968 planned pull up to the motel room and park and go into your room.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's an
And
interesting.
so then this would be parking for the rooms in the hotel?
Well, I mean, there is conflict in here. This is
Yeah.
part of Viridian Way. So in order to do this, I mean, my original
And the existing
thought.
is existing?
Oh, the existing is too bad.
Oh, so that parking area already exists now.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so that parking.
And what that's used
The tennis
for,
court,
the tennis court is one tennis court. There had been 2 tennis courts here, but 20 years ago that was relocated. There's pool, tennis, there's a dog run in here, but now we love to go to Lola Prentice Park. And this is somewhat scary. This is where cars think that they can avoid the backup on Jones Lane from the traffic light. So in the summertime in particular, cars are taking this left turn, they're speeding through, and then they're hitting the brakes. It's also become a skateboard park for our youth and bicycles with training wheels, which would be lovely to have that, but not when it's with the cross traffic of the drivers that think that they can bypass the traffic lights. So,
You're getting rid of the tennis court.
me, no.
No,
Tennis-
no, over there on that one?
No.
Oh, no, I'm not, no, nothing.
The new one?
So the new one, this is a more,
Oh, the
if we
tennis
get
court's still
Viridian
staying.
out of it, because Viridian is,
Maybe an extra set of hands for you.
yes, thank you. This is Justin Sarabola, who works with me.
Oh, good, good, good.
Give you the same angle here.
No,
No,
the-
it goes the other way.
Yeah,
so the tennis court is still
Yeah.
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's not
So
so bad.
the proposal original, but it doesn't have to be, but a proposal from maybe 10 years ago was that we would drop off here, relocate the parking around here, movie theater is right there, and Viridian Way would become smaller, and there was some sort of a feature, which would be a statue or a fountain or something to honor Moon Viridian. Nothing proposed on this side of the inn. And then the question is, at this point in time, this is what we currently have. This is building CD, this is building E, building F. AB had never been built, although there are some ancient plans for it. And I'd love to do something with this, like extend it through. And what do we need? Do we need some 4/5-star hospitality product with maybe suites? Do we need to have some workforce housing on the second floor above some more fancy hotel rooms? Do we want to put in a swimming pool, the aquatic center?
Somebody does.
I know. I mean, it's 2 acres in the village with a building that doesn't owe us anything. It was built during the 1980s as a sort
And
of,
who owns that building?
me.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
It's in an LLC. But I think there are better things that we can do by site
Is
planning.
this in the VB zone, or?
Yes, this is an R20, same as the
Right.
Village Latch, and this is village business.
Right, that's what I thought. It's
So-
so divided at the street.
Yeah.
So this is the line goes right down the middle
Yeah.
of it anyway, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
And I can take the
So
Viridian way.
this, here, the proposal would be to create more rooms here.
No, I think the proposal is, I think there's only 2 things that can happen. One of them is we're just gonna, I'm not creating more rooms here. This has to be fixed up the way it is, and we'll leave it the way it is. Bring tenants in, and there are tenants available. Or do something to master plan the whole thing. Get
Right.
rid of the runoff from all of this impervious lot coverage that's, although we have no sanitary, we had PW Grosser do a plan about 5 or 6 years ago. They looked at all of our septic, we upgraded every, the whole leaching field,
Right.
and everything we have after going through the leaching fields is running to the north. So that's not Lake Agawam, but the runoff from the lot, from the coverage, the impervious lot coverage, is certainly running into Hill Street, and then from there, it's probably part of our Lake Agawam. But we also don't need it. This is the largest hotel in Southampton Village. 72% of the people come year after year, and for locals, we try to offer meeting rooms and art gallery openings and places for gatherings for families, and I think it would be really lovely not to just fix this up, but to do something where we're extending something all the way through and putting a little bit more 24/7 density into our village and doing it with proper septic, whatever that may be, whether it's a village plant where I'm happy to pay for some of the hookup, of course, I'd have to, but, to be able to prime the pump or put in a small package unit. And I don't know what you'd like to see.
Well, so you're sort of basically proposing abandoning most of Viridian Way.
Well, originally, I was asking to take Viridian Way back because it had been donated to the village during the late 1960s as a potential thoroughfare for no remuneration, no consideration. And it does split, it's the same owner on both sides of the road. So if it's truly not a road that serves a purpose and isn't going to be beautifully maintained, and there may be another use for it, I had offered to take it back. And-
Okay, so you're
but
not,
it's
you
not-
don't want to extend it into Cooper's Farm? You
No,
just want to...
I don't think it will ever extend to Cooper's Farm. I think the people on First Neck Lane have significantly and strenuously objected to that.
Objected to that.
And the people here on Cooper's Farm
Probably, yeah.
are going to have nothing to do with having us, go straight through, because we're going to be chopping right into the yards of some of the condominiums that are there now. Um,
Is that actually to scale there in its relationship to Cooper's Farm?
Well, it was built by, it was built
No,
by
no,
CMAX
this one is
Sammy,
further
so
It's further away.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure. And this is CMAX plan.
No, I think the
I
Cooper's Farm is
pulled it up on
much closer.
Google's map before. I thought it was further, actually.
What was the next one? I really liked the last one.
My dream?
Yeah, you drew.
My dream.
Do you have a dream?
That one.
No, this one,
I
yeah.
like this
That's-
one.
This is the dream. Would be to, again, to have Viridian be a smaller Viridian, or potentially, I don't want to, I don't want to be disrespectful or say something that people may not be
And it's
pleased
actually,
with,
it is pretty close at
but
that
it's
spot.
close. It's just
Yeah.
the little triangle in here that's owned by the village.
Then it widens out.
Well, this is part of the, part of the village too.
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Isn't the Village Latch former owner's house, like right over here somewhere?
Yes.
Right over
Yeah,
there.
the village latch is here, and their house is on
And
Cooper's Farm.
Martin's house is like right in there,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And the village latch has obviously begun work.
yeah. Yeah, I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear.
Right, right.
I'm sure you do, all for
Yeah,
a
yeah.
long time.
Well,
So let
that's
me,
some concern also, but.
Okay, this is great. Let me maybe put this in a broader planning context, which maybe is our job. Our theoretically our job. So, we're in the middle of looking at, which is really, sort of a successor to the plan that was done several years ago for the Village Business District, the sort of use and future of the parking lots and the public infrastructure in the business district. And one of the conclusions of that report was it needed significant improvement. And that's, I think, visibly obvious at this point. So I think the context here, which is really interesting, and I thank you for bringing this up, is how do we look at this land, if you will, and this street in the context of the movie theater parking lot and the broader context of what we're trying to do. So, one of the things that I think we've all looked at is the fact that the movie theater parking lot is enormously underused. It's used mostly for a few hours, basically a week. I would say 90% of the use of that lot is between like 5 and 10 on Saturday and Sunday, on Friday and Saturday nights. And otherwise, it's a very sparsely used lot. That's an enormous amount of land.
Is it privately owned?
It
Yes.
is privately owned, although the village has I guess, an access right
Okay.
currently that allows it to use. The movie theater owners have opened up in the past the idea that maybe there could be some joint use.
Oh, cool.
So I think from our point of view, it would be really helpful to look at the two together. So for example, whereas Viridian Way currently really is a dead end, one possibility is you really look at it as connecting through to the movie theater parking lot
Right.
and providing different access so that lot got more use. And then, as you said, I think between those two, there's an enormous amount of land that's incredibly underutilized. Certainly workforce housing is one real possibility. I think more broadly, the need for
Hotel rooms.
hotel rooms, certainly, the need for some recreational options. So I think it is a good thing to talk about. I'd like to think of it more as, if I can, for Viridian Way having a broader and more rational use going forward, as opposed to just a dead-end street. I agree with you. I don't think there's any, I think it's unlikely there's going to be any future of that being connected to Cooper's Farm Road. I don't think it really makes sense at this point. So really the question is, what is the right way to use that village asset, if you will,
Right.
going forward? And I mean, I'm probably dating myself. I do remember when this little complex was almost like it was like the precursor to outlet retail.
It was the Villeroy and Bosch?
Yes,
Chinese
Villeroy and Bosch,
restaurant?
and then
I
Dance.
know, I remember.
And then Dance was there at one point before they were on Main Street. So it was really almost like, you know, what a retail developer would now build as an outlet center, way ahead of its time. But I don't think the village is about to become an outlet center. So I don't think that's for the right long-term use. So I think this is something we should be starting to take a look at. But I think we want to look at it in a more holistic way. So I think, you know, talking to the mayor and the trustees, you know, Viridian Way is a village asset. And the question really is, what is the proper role for that asset going forward?
Right.
In the context of the way we're looking at the village.
Yeah. So what are your plans with that building?
With this building?
Yes.
Take it down and put up something more higher and better?
Yep. So you are planning on completely wiping that building out and doing something,
Not tomorrow, I presume.
No.
but in
I mean,
a bigger,
I think in a bigger way that, I think these two buildings are quite charming, and there's a streetscape here, they're lovely.
Right.
I think that Viridian Way has all kinds of wonderful possibilities for
Right.
it, and I think what it is now is just this funny dead end.
Right.
That's potentially an accident waiting to happen. This is also where all the Uber drivers
Right,
hang out in
right,
the
right.
summertime, and then they
Right.
break into the inn and use the
Yeah.
facilities. Okay.
so I guess my question was then, if you were going to completely wipe out that building and do
What would
something
you do?
new?
What would it be?
Well,
That's why I'm here.
That's in part a question for us too, because
think
this
that-
is
I think there's a-
Village Business District,
This
and
is
the
our
question
plan,
is,
yeah.
we probably don't need more retail at this point, right?
But I think we need more hotel rooms.
Yeah, certainly hotel rooms. Right.
Claude, I think, because I'm also on the Village Business Revitalization Committee and the about to be blessed Job's Lane Arts District, and you know, I'm just very concerned about our village. I think that this should come down and be potentially a combination of some beautiful hotel suites. We
Mhm.
don't
Yes.
have family
exactly.
suites with
Right.
little kitchenettes, a little
Yes.
fireplace in the living room,
Yes.
and with it, coupled with some seasonal workforce housing. We are desperate to be able to.
How many units of housing could you do there if you were to do, let's say, do combination of suites and housing? How many units could you?
As many as you let me.
I think that's a good question, it's something we would need to
Within-
study.
not too sure about the
It's
workforce.
sanitary,
Right.
and traffic is not that significant. I mean, right now, it's approximately 2 acres, so 75% lot coverage is approximately 60,000 square feet
Right.
of buildable area on 2 stories.
2
It's a
stories,
huge,
yeah,
I mean, I'm not
That's
proposing
big.
120,000 square
Yeah.
feet, but certainly not proposing, you know,
Right,
an old
right.
septic system that gives
Right,
me 12 hotel rooms. Then
No, I think this is a great opportunity. It does build on the report we did and the work
Yeah.
we've done. I think my comment would be, we really should look at this also in the context of the movie theater parking lot, which is clearly directly adjacent to it, and think about the two of them as a pair.
Right.
I think
You know,
That's why I was asking the question. like,
right,
You know, you've done a great job with
Right.
some of these renderings. You know, it's fantastic to see that thinking. And if you're going to do away with that building, actually take it that step further and
And
start looking at what that could become
right.
with tying in.
I mean, because right now it's a one-sided lot, right?
yes.
And the question is, what does it become if it's potentially a two-sided lot?
There's also a, I mean, not.
And there's
all
also
those
a
are
big
hand-
grade
there's
change.
a- yeah,
Right.
Change in elevation.
So I think those are all things worth looking at. I certainly think,
The green
If it-
space is nice also
Yeah,
as a
yes.
component.
right, you know, this sort of street
I'm getting
that,
rid of this one.
I mean, does this
Okay.
Viridian
I want
Way?
more
These are very nice.
Lawns very well.
no, I think we should look at the current.
Oh, you
That's
want
the
to look at
current,
the
yeah,
current?
that's
Oh,
the current. So, you know, the idea of sort of taking this and eliminating this dead end and seeing how it works in the context of the movie theater lot. I think that gets really
This is-
interesting and
this is
begins
the
to
current.
unlock the whole lot.
And if you consider.
Right, there's that funny passage through
Yeah.
right now.
Which I,
Well, and
my
if you
insurance
consider
company
the-
said we had to close it. It was,
Well, we
Right.
really don't
If
want to
you consider the
encourage.
entrance coming in from the movie theater from Hill Street, so that these buildings basically don't have a face on a road, you come into a lot, and this is their face. So this
Right.
becomes their garden. And now I see that, and
That's a
that's
very good thing.
better than having two faces.
Well, that's
two-
what we need to look at, but I think just in terms of the village, that's an asset we really want to think about, and think what the proper use is.
Green space is always good.
Green space certainly is something we need. One of the things we've been looking at, and it sort of came up in the parking study that was done many years ago is, long run, it makes a lot of sense to sort of encourage some of the sort of longer term parking, if you will. People will park here for the day rather than, quick trip, to migrate towards this lot.
Extend 2-hour parking to all-day parking?
Right, and when I say this lot, the movie theater lot, sorry. And then look at the center, and free up this for a more
retail.
In and out.
palatable use, yes, yeah, and make it more dynamic. So I think this is good timing, but I really think we want to look at that because I think the mayor and trustees see Viridian Way as sort of a village asset, and so now that we're engaged, what is the proper approach?
What was the feedback you got when you presented 5 years ago? When I think it was Mayor Apley was there. I mean, what was the feedback then? I know you were presenting in front of them. So would you be willing to present the new board and the new mayor now and see what their feedback is?
yeah, the feedback
that's
was
enough.
very positive. The planning board was unanimously in favor of doing this. They said, what is there not to love about this? But it was never voted on. There were resolutions presented, and the resolutions came with 5 workforce housing units and some seasonal workforce housing, not for the inn necessarily, but for restaurants and for other lodging establishments or stores. I mean, everybody needs to have people in the
I think
summer
with the new
nowhere to
board you
live.
gave
Right, I think that the
And
need
then
for hotel
This
rooms.
was, so Viridian Way was somewhat controversial. I would take it back and agree not to build on it. To make it a green space, to give it to the Southampton Garden Club, to give it to, not the DEC, somebody who's going to make it very, very beautiful, very friendly,
So it would
something.
be public. It would be
It
public
is
space.
public space.
I
and it
think
would
we're
be
jumping
public
to the
space.
answer.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And I think before we have the answer, we need to do
Think
the
about
study.
Okay.
So I just think, I think the first step would be for us to begin to look at this.
Right.
So when we go to the trustees, we have some ideas of, from a village business district point of view, what would be the right thing to do, right?
Well, I
So-
know
Maybe there's someplace in between that
Right.
if you're, again, you called that building a number, but whatever it was, the one that you're going to knock down and renovate.
CD, yeah.
CD
Yeah.
building. CD building.
Maybe there's a way to keep Viridian Way with a new building, with a new site plan, and allow some of that parking to become on-street parking on Viridian. So you're actually pulling your pavement away from the Southampton Inn? But-
There is, but this all comes back to master plan
Right,
and use.
right,
You
right.
do not want to have a very fancy hotel product overlooking a street. I don't know
That's
that
right.
that's going to work.
Yeah.
And I also think that we must, ecologically, environmentally, we have to get rid of some of the impervious lot
Oh, I-
coverage
I-
within our village, especially with what's happening.
I mean, I think
I
if you
agree
go to Aspen or Jackson Hole or other, the idea of fancy hotel rooms facing a street is pretty much the rule. I must tell you, from a planning point of view, I don't necessarily agree with that. But I think your point of that this is a tremendous amount of paved area and probably doesn't need to be there, I certainly agree with.
Right.
But I think, as you said, I think we need to sort of look at this in a broader context so we can come back and say, look, this clearly is a village asset. What's the right way to make it work moving forward? And how can we also create a better environment for this site that gives it a better long-term use?
I think that this plan here is a very good plan. The only thing I would question is also the number of parking spaces
Yeah,
that you
that's-
have going into
You're
a single exit.
gonna have to go into that other lot.
Well, that's why I think we look at them in tandem,
Well,
because,
I
then
think
you
for
don't
the new building, what was proposed was having the parking underneath the new building and then to have 2 stories.
Right.
So the only parking spaces you need would be the 90 spaces that we currently have for the Southampton Inn, which would be relocated to the east of whatever the construction is, rather than being able to pull up to your room. Where are we?
So you have plans for that CD building already
I
then? If
have
you're talking
plans that were
parking
done
underneath?
by Don Jewell 10 years ago. I mean, when I bought this 22 years ago, the first thing was, we've got to get rid of this parking lot, and here we are. And
Right.
the children are grown, and I'm still here. The other thing that had been proposed by some people within the village was to relocate Viridian Way. There's an unnamed street between the Chamber of Commerce and Pilotro House, and it's closer to Viridian's business. If it were something that the family would accept, then this could be.
again, I think we're jumping ahead of
jumping
ourselves.
Well, you wanted the history, that was the
Right.
history.
We just
Okay.
want to see what the.
Yeah, I think we want to start with sort of what's a rational plan for this.
Right.
And then in the context of, and Ed, obviously you're very involved in the context of how we look at the parking lots and what their use is, obviously there's been a lot of conversation. I think Moon actually was one of the great advocates, if I remember, that the movie theater parking lot was a very good potential site for a dual level lot.
Yep.
Because there's such a steep hill there. So, those are things that I think now is the time to look at. Because I think one of the things I think some of us are looking at now with the central lot is, it's really taking a lot of burden now of being the main parking lot for the village, and maybe that's not a logical long-term use, because it really constrains what we can do in this central quad, if you will.
Well, this,
yeah.
this does involve parking lots, but it
Right.
also involves a dead-end street, basically.
Yeah. That should be connected.
That is overused for some people going through and turning around, and Uber's hanging out,
Right,
Yes.
from what I gather.
right.
That's his
And
sole,
skateboarders.
yeah,
Right,
and
right.
skateboarders, well, yeah.
And it's certainly an awful lot of paving in there for
Yeah.
underutilized.
So, yeah, so,
right.
I mean, the Viridian Way itself is not a parking lot, okay? It's
Right.
not a parking lot, it's a street.
Right.
Right.
But I think there's a way that it could be tied into the development
Yeah.
in a much nicer streetscaped urban,
Streetscape way,
Right,
really,
right.
and still honor
really.
the public road that's there.
Right.
Right.
I think there's a bunch of options. I think we want to look at those.
Yeah, maybe
Exactly.
maybe a pedestrian connection with
Right.
Locust Farm.
Yeah,
Yes, that was,
yeah.
thank you. Definitely, and that will take people to the library.
Yes.
Right. And I think this, has the potential to unlock some of the sort of constraint we have of that movie theater lot being really sort of an isolated little island.
I think it's exciting to start talking about.
Yeah.
It's good,
Exactly.
Right.
Knowing that you want to do something up there.
Right.
So,
we'd like to.
Okay.
This building should be maybe expanded.
Right, I think the idea, right. I mean,
Sounds
for a
like
2
it
acre
is.
lot, this is a very low level of use. It reflected people's thoughts at the time, right?
Well,
People
it's
looked at Southampton in
50
more.
years ago. It was-
Well,
Yeah.
I know that.
People
we-
looked at Southampton in a more suburban manner in those days.
We had
these were
always,
79, right? These buildings were built, 79, 80?
Those were built in, I think, 84, 85.
Okay.
Those are much newer. This was built around 70, between 70 and 72. And then those were the 1984, 85 sloppy grout.
Yeah, I remember those being built.
I mean, in increasing the hotel, the rooms and stuff, I know that the Village Business District, when we first talked about this stuff, we were picturing maybe perhaps a hotel or, concierge or something on Windmill Lane.
Correct, that's absolutely correct. We looked at it and in fact allowed for, within constraints.
So if this
Right.
becomes bigger,
Right.
Yes.
Is hotel allowed in?
So, yeah, so basically, when, during part of the plan, back in, when we did the Village Center Master Plan was, looking at other options for Windmill Lane. And the planning firm proposed allowing hotel use on Windmill, and Bill Hattrick, the village trustee at the time, and the Southampton Association had a lot of concern about, they thought it was going to be a large Marriott with timeshares.
That's what I want to do.
So the Village Business District now allows hotels, but has constraints on number of rooms and the use.
Okay.
The use. So, but they are allowed. That's one of the changes we made.
Okay.
But you can't do basically a sort of what I would call a convention center style hotel.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so,
Cottage style more.
This might
Yeah,
be
yeah.
Cottage style.
yeah,
Windmill Lane seems to be taken up with public buildings more than anything else right
and a
now.
lot of very low level use. I mean, certainly the idea of having more residential options in the broadest sense, including, hotel types options, is something that a lot of successful towns like ours have done, and it really helped. We don't really have many of those.
Yeah, I think that's encouraging to
Yeah,
expand
so-
the hotel.
Exactly. I think that also this is one of the very few sites that
Yes.
lends itself.
That lends
for this
itself
type
to
of-
that
For this
purpose.
type of development.
Yeah.
Right.
Where else can you build a hotel in a village?
Right.
And so I think that here to expand it is the right way to go. And maybe like topping rows or this type of high-end.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And these two buildings are fully utilized, you're happy that,
Those, they're utilized fine. We had looked at plans where we were going to take those down and see whether there was a way that we should even change the entrance and come through those two buildings. There are tenants in them.
Right.
They're all new roofed and windowed and HVAC'd and everything else, but I would look in terms of planning and your thought process of the entirety. Let's
Right.
look at the whole campus and see what the uses might be and how to handle the sanitary with them. But I think it's time. I think it would be fun. I would love to do this. The hotel industry is, there are questions here, but I want to be sure that whatever we do has enough uses that it's going to be economically viable
Mhm.
for the village
Yep.
and for people wanting to go out at 9:15 at night, not 11:15 at night,
Right.
9:15 at night, and support some of our retail
If I
and
could
our
get people out
restaurants.
at 8 o'clock at night, I'd be very happy right now. Forget 9 o'clock. That would be a start. Right.
All right. Well, I
Right.
would love to
Great.
work
Okay.
in a way that the village would like, that makes sense financially,
Okay.
and that, that enhances our downtown.
And
Do
I
you
think-
have these on digitally?
I'm sure I do. Justin will find
Yeah,
them for you. I do.
we'll find them.
Yes, I can
Yeah,
send
you
them
can
to you.
Sure.
So that they could be shared?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think it's very timely also because there's, a lot of questions of developments of.
Right,
and
right,
all
right,
sorts.
right,
This
So
way.
it's a very timely presentation.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Other questions from the commission? Okay.
Thank you.
Questions from the, thank you. Questions from the audience? Yes. Please come up or Charlie will yell at me.
Yells on the way up.
Right.
Nice to see you
Nice to
again.
see you, Sean.
I'm Alan McFarland. I heard,
Hi, Alan.
I've been through this before. but-
Yes, yes, you have.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll share a little ancient
Oh,
wisdom for a
good.
second.
Thank you.
I'm Alan McFarland. I'm still, I guess, temporarily on the planning board, having volunteered years ago to help Roy. This came up before.
Okay.
For the larger background, when it came up before, just to the highlights, the villages are always the same. And there was no larger planning, which you guys are talking intelligently about. I'm rooting for you. The issues that were afoot, that lurked in it, were there was an enormous objection from at least one of the Viridians to doing anything with the street. Now, you see it's bad, it's got, the use changes as the town changes and the use, but that is a big issue. There was also enormous issues that surfaced in lots of different ways when the public get involved, with extending it onto Cooper's Farm Road,
Right,
which has
right.
been some of you have dealt with Cooper's Farm
Yeah.
for its history
Yeah.
and access back there. Probably since then, the whole issue of traffic. And I have never in my life, in 50 years of seeing traffic studies and working on hiring them sometimes, seen a decent traffic study. And when it affects the village, they're always wrong. But the Hill Street mess of a summer go-slow from the library to the tobacco stands is a major problem to deal with. There's a design problem. I think I know why it happens, but I can't find anyone to intervene with, I guess it's the Department of Traffic in Albany. But anyway, anything that goes through there that connects to Cooper, no matter what you decide, you guys want to have a funeral or leave town, because people go crazy over that one. It is a really tough issue. The location, the big issue that was lurking the last time it came up was the location of, quote, a sewer plant.
Right.
This was the target. That whole area was potentially a target. No one knew what to say about it, do about it, who would be in it, who would be out of it,
That's, okay.
what it would be. So that area was, one of those targets with the big X, the guy said. I guess that's being worked on very hard now. I've got all sorts of views. In terms of water studies, which I've been stuck doing for over 30 years because of Agawam, because of the doomed church, that whole area drains into the swamp. The swamp used to run from the doomed church to the supermarket. It's been filled in over the years. Agawam's got smaller. Everything drains down to where the boats used to row across, 100 years ago to go to one side of the village to the other. So from a plumbing point of view, you're in good shape, but the time has come. That is a big red issue for anything, and we just went through it with the latch.
Right.
The latch survived because it was basically, people said, look, it's a prior non-conforming use that will get a tremendous upgrade.
Right.
And abandoning that use, it's all balanced. So it was subtraction. In terms of that end of Hill Street, remember, in recent time, it stopped being the auto outlets. There was Rogers and, Yoni and everybody, the Hulls, different, and so it's changing. Even the white stores on the corner there are always an issue because there's no drainage. They were built next to auto dealers. I mean, it's just how you fix that end of the thing. As this nice lady I always view as the son of Irving. She's the Irving House, reborn for modern times. That was the spot, and that's how the latch survived. If you can do more, fabulous. And anything, the one plan that's been that everybody gets upset about is anything you do that's more housing. I mean, yes, it's not just a theater thing. It's absolutely crucial. So if you can, whatever you get invented for the space. The driveway's closed. I used to drive for years. Go past the Beauty Park, go by Shippey Street Beauty Park, cut behind, and get up Hill Street the other way. Okay. Anything that goes through there, smart people will fix it. But that's been an issue off and on. And as soon as John Foster moved the building department out of there, we could close the driveway. And justifies the means. So all the issues. It's just, it does touch on the big ones you're working on. And it did come up with really pretty vigorous and organized, I won't call them town fathers, but people with real interest, starting with the Viridians.
That's why
I give you that as background, just because.
Is that a matter of record, I guess?
It's mostly a record. You can look at Charlie's got videos for a lot of it. You can hear the noise in some of it.
That's why I think it would really make sense to look at it.
That's just background for you.
That's incredibly helpful, and I think that is why it will make sense to look at a broader planning context. One of the things...
Well, by the way, it also involved the ambulance department. Right. Which the planning board strenuously objected to. We thought it was the dumbest decision that the village trustees ever made to compromise that space as part of the area. And it was part of it. That had to do with the sewage plant. And what he did with the space. This whole area there going toward the new library. Okay. That was it. And I may editorialize, but the planning board was asked to give some sort of a weird supplemental opinion. Why, I don't know. Tried everything I could give. It was nuts. And you might have, for instance, that obsolete firehouse.
Right, right,
Maybe it should have gone that way.
yeah.
Scatter the ambulance department to where the fire engines are. Come on. But so those issues do
Right.
relate, so you're on the case.
Right, and that end of, I would say that end of Hill Street, going into Windmill Lane, clearly sort of is looking for a future in some ways, maybe is the way to put it. So, one of the things that we found, which is really interesting, Gary Galassi, the village engineer, had, put together some new parking signs. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but in fact, that alone has caused people to start to understand where parking lots are. You come into this village, you don't live here, it's almost impossible to know where they are. They're sort of hidden away. One concept that came up in the planning study 5 years ago was people come into the village from the west, some of them certainly on Hill Street, divert them into that lot before they get into that core. So rather than trying to turn it in the direction of Hill, Windmill, and Joe's, they turn before that, use that parking lot, walk down into the village, and the movie theater becomes much more integrated into the village in a way that it's not now. It really is sort of almost an independent use unrelated to the rest of the village. So I think those are all issues that we're going to want to look at. Yeah.
What precludes Viridian Way becoming a pedestrian walkway rather than a road?
Well, right now it is a map street.
But I mean, way.
Dedicated map street.
What does the term way mean?
Just another term. It's another name for a street.
Well, why couldn't it be pedestrian?
That's certainly an option. I think, those are all options, but whatever action. So at this point, it is a map street. The village would have to take some action to do anything else. I think the trustees and the mayor will not look at that unless we put it in a broader context that makes sense to them.
I think so too.
Right.
But the Viridian family objections that you were discussing, if it remains Viridian Way, but it is a pedestrian way.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think let's broaden the context a little bit, which is how is that village asset best used in the future for the broader context of the village?
I'm just saying we're going to protect the Viridian Way. We're just going to make it a pedestrian walkway.
But that had been one of the, that was one of the proposals. Also, this is not quite right, but to leave Viridian Way as exactly a pedestrian walkway, the only conflict was that in order to do this kind of plan, I have to be able to park around. So where Viridian Way was thought to be going through. Now, this is
But ways never go through.
I think, Laura, the bigger context is.
No, I get the bigger context. I'm just taking
this
a section of the name.
No, but let me just. Viridian Way potentially is a way to link things in the village that need to be linked. That's part of what I think we need to look at is that, for example, the movie theater lot that's now quite isolated.
Yeah.
If you look at a broader circulation, we may be able to do something with Viridian Way that creates that lot really now either exits onto Hill Street, which is a disaster, obviously. Why more people don't get killed making that turn is beyond me. Certainly have been plenty of fights there. Or goes down that weird ramp into New
Viridian Way,
Windmill.
as it exists now, doesn't connect.
Right, but it could.
No.
But that's what I'm saying. But
Oh,
that's.
it could.
Yes.
Oh, well, then
I'm
you're
not sure.
really going to make a mess.
Yeah, but
We try.
I'm not sure
That's our job.
I'm not sure that we want to connect traffic from one side to the other.
But that's what we want to look at, right?
Yeah, we want
Right.
to look at it, and also, when you on the windmill side, that actually way is a private. It's not. It's part of private property.
Right.
And
You
when I
can
look at
connect it here.
yes,
Right.
yeah, well, I think that here the Viridian Way when it was created with something in mind, which is no more.
Correct.
So I think that the application the proposal that's in front of us I think makes a lot of sense. I think it's, we're trying now to say, well, there was a plan, 50 years ago to do something, and now we're not doing it, so now let's look at what else can be done.
I just want
But
to
I
put
think
it in
makes
a,
a lot
right,
of sense.
to put it in a
Makes
broader
lot of
context.
sense, and it's,
Okay. All right. Other questions from the audience? Okay.
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you. I hope so. Thanks. Thank you, Joe.
So that's a good segue into, we are looking very seriously at the central parking lot. The mayor's been offered some outside assistance with that, which is great. And so we're going to try to do a sort of more in-depth. And I think one of the reasons that this is so timely is I think one of the things that's come up as we've looked at the central parking lot is it's carrying an enormous amount of parking. And to the extent that, for example, it's used during the day, during the week, the major use of it is employee parking. It doesn't really need to be there necessarily, all of it. So I think we want to look at something that allows us to, use it in a more broader asset. So.
Is it being shelved in lieu of wastewater issues or?
No, I think
Going
we're gonna,
forward?
I think part of the idea is we would identify areas that could be used in the lot for wastewater.
And keep those and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
build around it, so
Yeah,
to
yeah.
speak.
But the other thing I would say about the parking lot, when Ed and I did our walking tour with Gary, was one of the things that came up that I thought was very interesting. I can't remember whose idea it was, but, the possibility of really creating rain gardens within the lot to start to do better drainage and water retention than now happens. That lot now, basically everything just runs off and into the lake eventually.
It's a mess.
And it's a very large piece of land.
Are we thinking about keeping this street option open?
Yeah.
Also part of the
Yeah.
DD?
West Main Street.
And-
West Main Street, yeah. And Parish
deline-
Way, or whatever we call it. Right.
Don't give it
We
a
won't call
name
it
or
way.
a family's going to get upset if it gets abandoned.
I don't think there are many parishes left.
But it's going to be delineated down,
Right.
up by Shippey's.
Well, that is one of the ideas, yeah.
Okay.
Any other items? Okay, so we have our next meeting is the beginning of April. I think just, just look out for a email, I guess, and then we'll put it on the village website. I think, we're trying to figure out the right format to sort of go back to the trustees on the issue of the wastewater management for the village center.
Are we going to wait until the town trustee?
Yeah, no, absolutely, but I think we want to schedule some sort of sit-down, and whether that's better done at the public meeting or whether we do a workshop, we're trying to figure out the right way to do that.
Okay. Workshop to me sounds better.
Yeah, we really like our
Get all your
workshops,
ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Okay.
so. Okay, thank you.